Alex is 17, and his biological brother, Luke, is 15, almost 16 this summer, and they were adopted from Russia, and they were actually our first adoption. I met Ed in high school, so we were high school sweethearts and have been married for 27 years, and we have 3 biological children that are now grown. These 2 children were adopted from Russia, and we started that process 10 years ago, I guess, or more, 12.
It's 13.
13 years ago. Wow, time flies. And we started down that road. I always say we kind of did it backwards. We started with international adoption, and then we did domestic adoption, and then we went into hosting. So it's kind of like we did everything backwards. But we've kind of done it all. We have 2 adopted from Russia, 3 from the United States, and we have hosted many, many times. And it has changed our lives. I said that is when we really had a change of heart at being able to stand up for the orphan. We've always worked with children, but it changed our lives, I think, as much as it, changed theirs.
How did you learn about hosting after your adoption odyssey?
I had heard about it for, when I was researching for international adoption and then domestic adoption, and started learning about hosting, but it was always far away from where we live. We lived in North Georgia, and there was no access to it. It was always, something that you had to travel far away to be able to do, or you had to live, in that region to be able to host. If you were going to host, say in New York, you had to stay up there, and it was just not something that was easy to do, back then. And after we had had adopted, and then the more we looked into it, the more programs became available, and the more they brought chaperones into your area, and the more people were willing to do it, and the doors just opened, to being able to do that, and mainly the internet, just doing the research, and that's how we found out, just digging the information ourselves.
Tell me a little bit more about the story of initially when you both decided we're going to adopt.
Wow. I heard it on Christian radio, a call to, not do cable TV for, a month. That much money can feed an orphan, for a year, and that just really touched my heart. And before that, I had been I had read a book called The Prayer of Jabez, and in that book it said to pray that prayer of Jabez for yourself, which was to God bless you and to expand your boundaries, expand your territory, but to say that prayer open, wide open, not specifically for something or a specific blessing, but to pray it openly to whatever God's will is. God bless me in that, whatever form you would have. So I had prayed that at the beginning of the year, and, openly believing in whatever way he would have. And this was about the time 9/11 rolled around 6 months later. And right after that is when I heard this on Christian radio, and it kind of, pinged my heart. Didn't think anything about, praying that prayer at the time, but thought, we have 3 children, it was just unheard of. We couldn't adopt, and 100 reasons we couldn't. So every excuse I had, God would lay out, here's how you can, and so finally I had to tell him. This was this was way before he even knew. And so I did, and he he said he would pray about it, and he went to a breakfast meeting with his business, who had the speaker at the meeting, which was a Christian speaker, happened to be
He's a missionary.
the
and his
son had written the book, The Prayer of Jabez. And he came and told me, you're not going to believe, who was speaking at this. And I went, oh my gosh, my prayer is being answered. We have to do this. And there's where our journey began, is, that we knew we're going no matter what, to get our children from Russia. And that's where we've been on the road. And, we have 8 children and 5 adopted, and these 2 brothers are from Russia, and it's our lives have been changed ever since.
I got to jump in because, it's a really, really cool story, the way that the whole thing just started, and it's a God thing. You could see at the time God's hand in it, but after the fact and stuff, looking back or even trying to explain it to anybody, if you can't see God's hand at work in the whole thing, then, you're just in total denial. But, it really, really was neat because Angie got a burden. She wasn't sure really what we needed to do, but knew that we had been blessed and really had something more that we needed to do. But she carried that around by herself and didn't share it with me. And then all of a sudden she gets this bolt of lightning that it's adoption and it's international adoption. So she has to break down and tell me. And the way that she does it is she writes me a 4-page letter. And at the time I came home from work, and she handed me the letter with really kind of an attitude and basically said, I don't want to talk to you about this. I want you to take some time and pray about it. Don't have a knee-jerk reaction, yada, yada, yada. But you need to take some time. And so at the time, I was commuting a long way, and I tend to be somewhat of a workaholic and stuff. And I thought, I can't believe this. She's mad at me because I'm working too much. And so I go in and take off my work clothes and start reading the letter. And the first half of the first page is exactly what she just said. Don't shut down, don't have a knee-jerk reaction, yada, yada, yada. But I think we need to adopt. And I think we need to adopt internationally. And this was probably 30 days after 9/11. And when I read it, I knew she was right. But there were, off the top of my head, I could have given you 50 natural reasons why she's right, but not right now. And so that's what I did. Is I came out and basically said, you're right, I need time. I need to talk about this and pray about it. And then the way the whole thing came full circle with me going to a company meeting and a missionary being there who was the son of the guy who had wrote the Prayer of Jabez, and he was talking about stuff at that meeting with respect to the company, but what was in my mind was basically this adoption. And basically what he said in several different ways is, if you believe something really is what God's leading you to do, how strong is your faith? How much are you willing to step out on that if you really believe? And with what I was processing at the time, even though it was a company meeting and stuff, was this adoption thing. And I could think of, by then probably 200 different reasons why it was not a good time then. But I realized it didn't matter, because if this is what God was leading us to do, which I knew as soon as I read it, and Angie had known that there was something, and then when she knew that this was that's what we needed to do, that all the natural reasons in the world shouldn't matter, and that we should be willing to step out on faith and go and do what he was needing us to do. And if we did, then he'd take care of it. That we just had to have the faith to do what he was leading us to do, and how it was going to work was beyond me, but it was going to work, and it did. And that's one of the things that's just really, really neat to be able. It's hard to explain, but God, it was really great to be us and to see it working all around you. And all of our adoptions have really been that way. And then the hosting and stuff has been fantastic too. So I mean, it's just, we're very blessed, and so it's you think you need to give back, but then when you start doing it, you realize that you're getting more out of it than these kids are and stuff too. So I mean, it's wonderful all around.
Now, what's happened to the kids you've hosted?
The first two, they did not want to leave because they still had a connection with their birth mother, even though they were totally free for adoption. But I went back, and when I was in the orphanage for interviews, the two boys, they were 12, but when I went back, they were aging out. They were 16, and just happened to, see them on the interview trip, and they, I recognized them, and they recognized me, and they, said, wait, and they ran to their room and came back, and they had the photo album from our hosting, and, brought it to me, and they could name everybody from hosting. I mean, it was just a blessing. They had kept that, they treasured it. After all those years, that hosting still meant, the world to them. And that's, there was no, they weren't planning on being adopted. They still wanted to keep that relationship. They didn't want to, leave because their birth mom was there and they still could see her. But that hosting, meant the world to them.
Yeah, there's no telling what 30 years down the road impact it may have on us by having contact with them, or them by having contact with us. There's no downside to it. And it is sad when the kids have to go back. But in many cases, it is their choice that, as much as they loved it here and they loved us, that because there is a biological parent that's still alive, or there is some small hope that that situation may get put back together, that they want to cling to that as well. And I mean, we need to respect that, but it's heartbreaking, but it doesn't make you stop.
Yeah, there's the old saying of, it's better to have loved and lost than to not have never loved at all. Hosting is not just for people who want to adopt. That is a byproduct, and a wonderful one. And it is also not just a benefit for the child. It is a benefit and a blessing to the family, and that's something I think that most families don't understand, and you won't until you have done it. That it is a huge blessing to the family, and my sister is one of those. I have been in hosting and adopting forever, and it took me a long time to convince her to host. And I don't know why people have reservations about it, but she was one of those. And when she finally did, her testimony that her family, her extended family, was changed by bringing a girl into her home. It drew her whole entire family back together just from hosting. They didn't pursue adoption, but it brought this girl out of her shell, gave her confidence, and just the girl blossomed. But what it did for her family was huge. It drew them back together. Her sons are grown with wives. She has stepsons. It just brought them all together. And the testimony that she has is what hosting did for her, even though what it did for the girl was huge. And that's what you normally see. But what it did for her family was huge as well. And that was an adoption story.
So do you think it's cruel to bring these kids here and put them through a hosting and have them go back and not be adopted?
No, my example is, if you see a hungry child and you want to feed them a full meal, are you not going to give them that meal because you can't give them that meal every day of the week? No. You're going to give them a full meal because you can, when you can do it. So I'm going to host and show them what a family is like and give them that while I can. Sure, I'll do it. That's not cruel. That's giving them what I can give them while I can.